when I tried it for the first time, that I came alive. I cannot explain how much mental clarity I got. In fact, I then became not addicted to it, but it became a staple for me.
Welcome to Forever Young, the health and well-being podcast from Lanserhof. My name is Mario Pederzolli, and in every episode, join me in conversation with a variety of health experts and special guests as we explore what it means to live well. We may not find the secret to eternal youth, but join me on our quest as we explore just what it means to live a balanced, healthy, and happy life.
Hello again and welcome. In today's show, we explore the fascinating world of biohacking, how by making small incremental changes in our diet and lifestyle, we can make significant improvements in our overall health and well-being. So let's start with the fundamentals. Biohacking is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you so that you have full control over your own biology. It is essentially the practice of changing our chemistry and our physiology through science and self-experimentation to energize and enhance the body. It's a broad definition, but that's also because the concept is constantly evolving. It includes implementing lifestyle and dietary changes that improve the functioning of your body, as well as wearable technology to help you monitor and regulate physiological data. It can even run to extremes such as using implant technology and genetic engineering. The possibilities are endless, but they are all rooted in the idea that we can change our bodies and our brains, and that by doing so, we can ultimately become smarter, faster, and live well for longer as human beings. Well, to help us make sense of it all is Tim Gray, widely regarded as this country's leading biohacker and founder of the Health Optimisation Summit, the UK's largest alternative annual health conference. Tim, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us from Germany.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
Now, you're one of the few who've managed to travel. So what takes you to Germany, Tim?
I came for some biological dentistry work with Dr. Dominik Nischwitz in Tübingen because I had impacted wisdom teeth and some cavitation surgery. So maybe we can dive into what that's about for those that don't know.
Well, you really are on a personal biohacking journey, I think, as you've just demonstrated, actually. And maybe talk about this and how you ended up with the career you have today, because I'm sure that wasn't the original master plan.
It definitely was not. I don't like the label, but I would consider myself an entrepreneur, or historically speaking, starting, scaling, selling companies. Mm-hmm. Quite successful, I guess. And then about 10 years ago, I got sick. And before that, I just thought sickness was a weakness, something that my staff had when they wanted an excuse out of coming into work. And I didn't really pay attention to my health, just because I guess I was always so focused and always running around at 200 miles an hour. And actually started getting urinary tract infections, kidney stones, severe bloating, all sorts of different weird symptoms going on. And we got to the point where I couldn't leave the house. And I went from being, a high performer, super sharp mind, to, being severely broken, I guess. And, it got to the point of I was in the doctor's, every day in the space of a week, and then at least once or twice every other week. And my doctor, bless him, who is now retired, I said to him, "What's up with me?" And he said, "We've tested everything, can't find anything wrong," and shrugged his shoulders, which is a typical route these days. It's happening more and more and more. Where, the medical system is fantastic for emergency care. It is finely tuned, but for chronic health issues, for some reason, there's a blank spot that just isn't quite covered yet. I emphasize the word yet. And really, I took it upon myself in a business mindset of approaching my health like it was a company. So after this point, him shrugging his shoulders, I realized that the big powers of the doctors and the hospitals, weren't able to help me, and I'd always, that if something goes wrong, you've got them there to rely on. You can always go back. There's an expert to help you. But it got to the point where I was like, wow, actually on these things, I can't. What do I do? So I picked up a pack of Post-it notes at home and wrote down each symptom and each thing that I had going on and put them into a hierarchy, almost a cause and effect chart on the wall, mapped it out. And, kind of linked them together to realize on a top-down approach what it was that I could tackle that would filter down and fix all the symptoms and the issues below. And that's really where it began. And I did that for almost 5 years with testing different supplements or various different things, feeling my way around in the dark until I heard about biohacking.
Well, yes, presumably. How long ago was this, Tim?
That was about 2014, 2015. Now I heard about biohacking. Must have been around that.
Your symptoms and when you took matters into your own hands, that was presumably.
Yeah, so 2011 is when I started getting the. Yeah, 2013 was really heavy, really heavy for me health wise, and then it kind of picked up from there.
So I think for 10 years ago, the term biohacking presumably didn't really exist.
It had only just been invented.
Okay.
It had only just been invented by the founder of biohacking, the father of biohacking, they call him, Dave Asprey, who is the inventor of bulletproof coffee. Mm-hmm. He had chronic health issues. He was obese and things like that. And, traditional system couldn't really help him losing weight and things like that. And that's where it came from about 10 years ago. It's since exploded in size. And I think that's partly because it's very quantified. There's a lot of there's several definitions of biohacking. And I guess it's probably worth me saying that for the listeners because,
please.
As always, the media likes to overhype things and make things sound more extreme because that gets more readers or more clicks. Unfortunately, it's the same when it comes to biohacking. It's not transhumanism, which is chip implants in your hand, to be able to pay for your groceries or shopping, without a card. It's not editing your cat's genes so it glows in the dark, which is CRISPR. It is literally health optimization, and the difference between health optimization, biohacking, and the traditional wellness industry is that wellness, you can have a functional medicine doctor, you can do yoga, you can do all these different things that might be recommended to you, but they're not necessarily quantified. Whereas biohacking, if you've got sleep issues, instead of just taking a sleeping tablet, which is obviously an option, but it's let's track your sleep. Let's look at the deep sleep, the REM sleep, the light sleep. Let's look at your heart rate variability. Let's look at environmental factors such as how much natural light or unnatural light do you have exposed to your body before bed, during sleep, and on waking. What's the temperature of your room? And then changing something to see how much of an impact that has. So typically, for instance, a real common one with biohackers is they wear blue blocking glasses, which are the crazy yellow or orange lenses. It's not because they look diva-ish, although some people do wear them for that reason. And they block blue light. Blue light stops us secreting melatonin, obviously melatonin being our sleep hormone. So if we're subjected to blue light throughout the day, which is generally fine, but before bed, 3 hours before bed, our bodies don't know what time of day it is. So therefore, we don't start secreting melatonin, therefore we don't sleep properly. We feel like we might or do, but when you look at the data, like we're tracking it with an Oura ring, you realize actually, no, that can be adjusted. So without medication, with a simple thing like wearing blue blocking glasses, or another one, an example of this is, let's turn off the Wi-Fi at night. Let's put your phone on airplane mode and charge it in another room, because you can then track it to see how your deep sleep or REM sleep improves and your heart rate.
So by having your phone, I'm asking this as much as personal interest as anything else, but with your phone next to you, that can affect and interrupt your sleep just by having it on the Wi-Fi.
Yes, there's recent study done. And very recently, actually, I heard about this last week only, that how many times have you had a text message, you got your phone on silent or whatever, and you think, oh, I've just had a message. There's no noise or anything. You look down it and then a message pops up. Unconsciously, we understand or know when there are EMFs happening. Like, to our unconscious, it's almost like we're awake when we're asleep if we have high EMFs around us. It's very controversial. It's very at the forefront of these things in the health space right now. But the thing is when they tested and tracked the brain to see what lit up with and without Wi-Fi, or when the phone was ringing, the brain actually thinks it's awake even when it's asleep. So wow. Basically, it interferes with the repair time that we have, which is sleep. Obviously, we sleep to repair the damage that we've done to our body during the day, using the energy that we have collected from the day, whether that comes from the sunlight, whether it comes from food or whatever. That's part of it. But if we're not sleeping properly, we're not repairing properly, which is why the best longevity drug is the best sleep. So therefore, it really begins with sleep and biohacking, but quantifying it and knowing, I turn off my router, for instance, my Wi-Fi router, and my sleep score improves by 20%. It's very obvious. You can then change one variable at a time and see and perfectly refine, like you would tune your engine for your car, perfectly refine it bit by bit.
So for you, biohacking it's all about measuring and collecting the data and the performance in all the different areas of your life that you can measure,
with the goal to optimize health and performance. Yes. The caveat to this is that biohacking, as with any forefront trends or trends, it's often controversial until it becomes more widely accepted. So there are some things as a biohacker that biohackers may try. And I'm not saying I have or haven't, for instance, but with peptide therapy is widely accepted now in the States.
You may wish to explain that a bit more for listeners.
Yeah, so peptides very simply are, so you have proteins and amino acids. In between, you have peptides, polypeptides. And so they're almost like little messengers of types of proteins, I guess, amino acids strung together. Now, they are natural, I guess you would call them messengers that our body has naturally from when we eat food. We break down the proteins, et cetera, and it has different messages that signal the body to do different things. For instance, there's one called BPC 157, which is known to help the body repair, specifically the digestive process. And it comes from gastric juices, apparently, originally, but you can actually buy it, and it's used for research purposes in most countries. In some countries, you can have it prescribed, which is then injected in either subcutaneously or intramuscular. And that indicates the body to start repairing quite quickly. Now, there's a few blogs out there with some of my colleagues that have actually say heal like Wolverine because it's just so effective. And it has some really interesting anecdotal and clinical evidence behind it right now, but it's right at the forefront. So in the medical system in the UK, they probably go, cringe, oh, you don't know the source of this stuff. You don't know what you're putting into your body. But the point is, it's actually got a lot of research work going behind it from private companies that are going to bring this mainstream in the coming years. And so there's things like that a biohacker such as myself would go, what is the risk? What is the reward? And for instance, blue blocking glasses, very low risk, very high reward, especially when you track it. Something with peptides, if you're injecting something, I go, well, the risk is potentially quite high. How do I minimize that risk? And what is the reward? Well, if I've really damaged my body and I need to heal super quickly, what things would I pick to do that, such as red light therapy or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, peptides, making sure that I use proteolytic enzymes and then really attack it to help it. So the risk would be quite high for peptides. And there are a whole host of things. So sometimes medical professionals can cringe at biohackers because they're trying things, but they are calculated risks and they are generally at the forefront. Yes. But I think this is why biohacking is growing so quickly is because it is getting some very good results. And from some, so for instance, medical practitioners can't go recommending some of these things because they are at risk at losing their license because there's just not enough studies or data behind them right now. But it only takes, a few hundred biohackers across the world that are a little bit riskier than the average, showing that something works for an investment firm to say, actually, we're going to fund research in this area because we believe that this is the next wonder drug. And there's, for instance, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I'm a massive fan of this, massive fan of this. And it hasn't been widely used until recently, except for the bends for divers, obviously. And it's known for people with diabetic foot wounds. Instead of having to have the foot amputated, you have hyperbaric oxygen therapy, a certain amount of sessions at a certain pressure over a certain period of time, and it helps them heal from the inside out. So there are applications that are known, but not necessarily, they're off-label, I guess. Now, hyperbaric oxygen therapy for mental clarity, for healing, for recovery, for performance, like for instance, for famous tennis players I've got to know, or footballers, they use this stuff. And I was doing this 6-7 years ago now, and now it's becoming mainstream and being widely accepted. So there are areas like this that, very low risk but massive reward that are now becoming more and more mainstream.
Yes, we're about to launch hyperbaric oxygen therapy here, in fact, for the rest of this year, and it just, it seems to be something that will quickly gain mainstream traction.
It is, yeah. I mean, I loved it so much when I tried it for the first time that I came alive. I cannot explain how much mental clarity I got. In fact, I then became not addicted to it, but it became a staple for me. And I would take my pack of Post-it notes in there. I'd take my phone in and I would do brainstorming and I'd work in there. I'd have Post-it notes stuck all on the inside of the chamber, actually.
Was that after the first session? Did you feel an immediate benefit, Tim, or was that a cumulative? Depending
on how well oxygenated you are. I mean, again, with the Aura Ring, it tracks your respiratory rate. A lot of us are over breathers, but under oxygenated, because we need to be able to deal with our carbon dioxide properly, because carbon dioxide helps force oxygen in the cell. So if we're over breathing, i.e. we're taking too much oxygen in, but we're not able to hold our breath properly for a period of time, we're under oxygenated. So for those people that use hyperbaric that may have bad posture, actually are the people that are mouth breathing when they're running and they're stopped for panting for air, they're under oxygenated. So for those guys, hyperbaric is just like a wonder drug. It's a plaster because it will get you performing well, but really you need to focus on breathing properly as well. It's such as working with a personal trainer. He will say, here's your form, here's how you do this exercise. See you in 2 weeks' time for your next session. But in the meantime, I need you to do this stuff. Hyperbaric is like that. It's almost like, well, here's a top up. Here's, let's get your oxygen levels up. But you need to learn to breathe properly in between sessions. Otherwise, you're always going to be falling back into that. So hyperbaric works from the first session for many people. For other people, they need it after a surgery. For other people, they do it for performance, just ongoing. There's a lot of city boys in London that love doing it on their lunch breaks, just because it gets them so sharp for the afternoon. Long gone are the days where they'd be in the pub at lunchtime. Now they're looking to get IV therapy or hyperbaric at lunchtime. That is perfect for that.
Or just looking for that edge. Coming back to tracking, I know you mentioned the Aura Ring, but of course these days we can measure steps, we can measure sleep, we can measure calories, we can measure heart rate, so on. Can this become too obsessive a pursuit, and can it almost not backfire, but just become too obsessive?
Yes, especially with dopamine dominant or dopamine deficient people that are chasing dopamine 100%. Like with anything good or something's bad, it can become addictive. I think it goes to the point where I was tracking 35 points of data a day manually, plus my data on my Oura Ring.
Did you have time for anything else, Tim?
Oh, it would take me 15 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And I plotted that on a spreadsheet so I could look at correlations between, sort of different things I ate, what that did to my digestive system, up to 72 hours later, and how much water I drink, down to the specific gravity of hydration on the way out with my urine. I mean, and I was tracking my body temperature 5 times a day, and then averaging it out and looking at which supplements brought my body temperature up and stabilized my adrenals, because you can quite accurately check your metabolic rate and your adrenals based on your body temperature. So it got to the point where I went, holy crap, I'm doing a bit too much here. I'm a bit too extreme, but I'm getting lots of good data and I'm able to refine things. But I think knowing when you're super ill, you do everything you can to optimize your health. You're desperate almost. It's almost like you've got a gun to your head. And then you need to know when to let go. Now I have things in place. I make sure that if I need to snack, or, if I'm traveling, I have wild smoked salmon in my bag, for instance, or tin sardines, good quality tin sardines as a snack, opposed to having to grab a sandwich or a Pret or something. I put things in place so that I don't fall. So I have these things. I carry certain supplements with me, and I wear my Oura Ring. And then if I feel like I need something, I use a modality like Hyperbaric. So it can become obsessive, but it's also, you could say the same with anything. Why do humans have sex, for instance? We have it to reproduce, but it's also fun. So therefore, we do it for both purposes, right? Now, it's the same for me with biohacking. I'm not comparing biohacking to sex, by the way. But
that was my next question.
Yeah. No, but the point is, I very much enjoy having good health. I very much enjoy biohacking, and by immersion has become my career, because it's the overlap. If you look at the Venn diagram of, the overlap between, your passion and career and these things. And I fit perfectly into that. So I'm very happy, but a lot of beginners do kind of get sucked in if they are that dopamine dominant type. Definitely.
Well, actually, let's look at that, because when we look at the last year and a half, let's say, we all know what the world has gone through, and we've all personally gone through some worse than others. But coming out of lockdown now, I think we all understand that we must take responsibility for our own health and well-being. And if we don't, poor chronic lifestyle and diet habits do catch up with us. So we have to commit. And for those of us that have had that wake-up call, maybe, how's the best way to start, Tim?
Really good question. It really depends on everyone, where people are. I think the wake-up call is what we evolved with is what we survived with. What we didn't evolve with isn't working. There are, like, I'll give you an example, is that I get called extreme. I actually did a post on Instagram about this yesterday. I get called extreme quite a lot for taking my shoes off and standing in the grass, or, having a high fat breakfast, or doing a hyperbaric oxygen session. We're so far detached from nature that we get called extreme for being back in nature in some cases, such as grounding. So the things that people should have in place are generally the things that we would have evolved with that we don't necessarily have now. And I'll explain very quickly. For instance, if we are not performing too well, or we have brain fog, and we check our oxygenation, for instance, our respiratory rate, and we're under oxygenating, then breath work is an obvious thing to do. We can mimic improving your breath work by having something like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or, kind of like hyperoxygenating for a while to aid recovery very quickly. such as supplementing. If you need more magnesium, you won't refuel a deficiency with broccoli overnight, but you can help with magnesium IV very, very, very quickly. So, there's areas like that where we're utilizing nature or mimicking nature. Okay. So what most people can do is actually understand the fundamental building blocks of what our bodies need to thrive. And if they do these things, their chances of not getting viruses or infections or metabolic health issues significantly reduce, significantly. And I'll give you an example. Last year through COVID, I traveled through 26 cities and 10 countries. Okay. I was not careful. I wore a mask out of respect for others if I was asked to, only if asked to, because actually I am exempt because of a sinus surgery. And I wasn't careful anyway. And now I'm not in a risk group, and I spend my life optimizing my health. Okay. Now I didn't get it. I know I came into contact with people with it, and all I do is put the basic building blocks in place. Now, this isn't a corona discussion by any means, but just saying that it's about minimizing risking, ticking off the things on the list to have those. So number one would be sleep properly. And everyone may say, oh, well, I sleep properly even if I have a coffee before bed. But if you look at the data, your body's not resting. It's not recovering. You just think that you're sleeping. You'll just not be conscious. You'll see that your heart rate is elevated. Your heart rate variability is lower. You'll see that your respiratory rate is increased slightly. You probably see either your deep sleep or REM sleep lower than they should be. So therefore recommending drink coffee before midday, not after, because of its half-life for most people.
As early as that in the day?
Yeah.
After midday, okay.
Based on half-life, which apparently on average is around 5 to 6 hours for people. If you have a cup of coffee after midday, it's like having a quarter of a cup of coffee just before you go to bed. It's madness. So at 9 o'clock. So I would, so that's an example. Okay. So proper sleep, optimize it. You can get a ring. You can try different things to improve your sleep, turning your Wi-Fi off, making sure your phone's on airplane mode and uncharged in another room, making sure your bed's pulled away from the wall so you haven't got electric sockets right behind your head, because that does have an impact too. Making sure that you wear blue blocker glasses before bed and wake up with sunrise, opposed to being kept up late with blue light and then waking up in the morning with sunrise, which is blue light, and having a short sleeping window, which ages you quicker. So that's number one. Number two is making sure that your hydration is absolutely on point. And a big problem is that people have these days is that they drink lots and lots of water, but it's low in mineral content. And we drink water for two purposes mainly. One is to flush out toxins, to keep our blood fluid, obviously. And two is to get electrolytes into our blood, into our bodies. Electrolytes being obviously for our electrical system. And if we're dehydrated, and most people are, apparently 30% of people are dehydrated, then by the time we're 85, apparently we're 45% dehydrated by the time we're 85 from on a cellular level. And so now if you increase your, and I'm talking sea salt intake, not table salt, very, very different. Sea salt, that's minerals. I have half a teaspoon on waking and a glass of water and half a teaspoon before bed. You can actually go significantly higher, and this is based on a book called The Salt Fix by Dr. James Nicolantonio. Incredible book about how salt has been wrongly ostracized, but table salt.
Yes, this flies in the face of current thinking.
It does completely. In fact, like for instance, one of my issues, and I'll take it back to how I found hydration to be so important, was that when I was super ill, I would urinate 15 to 30, maybe more times a day. If I had a cup of tea, it would be out, herbal tea or whatever. It would be out, it seems, more than I drank. And which gave me, all sorts of issues and mental chronic fatigue, mental clarity issues and things. So what I did was I then read that certain minerals help you retain water better. So I tested adding minerals in, and I tested, various ones on their own to see what did what. And for me, it was potassium. Adding in 200 milligrams of potassium a day actually stopped my frequent urination overnight. Like within 24 hours, Goodness. I went from driving insane, like not being able to be away from a toilet because I knew I would be busting, and only a bit would come out. It wouldn't be a good pee. That I realized actually there's something in this. So I really spent a lot of time studying minerals and hydration. And Celtic Sea Salt is the most mineral, similar to our blood composition in terms of mineral composition that there is. And the theory is that we came from the sea, we evolved from the sea, therefore we have a very similar mineral composition. So if you're peeing more than 5 or 6 times a day and waking in the middle of the night to go pee, then you probably got a mineral imbalance. And again, this, it's very basic stuff, and yet doctors don't generally look at it.
So coming back to the water, do you mean therefore drink mineral water as opposed to tap water? Is it those small changes can help or not?
Most mineral water, or should I say bottled water, isn't actually mineral water. It's spring water or whatever, but it's not necessarily high in minerals. And in fact, the water industry, I have been told by someone within the water industry that they know that the lower level of minerals, the more water people need to drink. Therefore, it becomes a more needed product. You remineralize it, and then you need to drink less. If you think when you go to somewhere like Mexico or a hot country, how salty, or should I say how much different does the water taste? It's actually high in minerals in these hotter countries because you excrete it more. And yet in colder countries, or, in England and America, it's very low mineral content water. And how many people do you see carrying a bottle of water around with them, like a litre or 2 a day? We did not evolve with this, but we did evolve with natural water that was high in mineral content, and foods that were higher in mineral content as well, because they weren't traditionally farmed. They weren't factory farmed, should I say. So therefore, the soil was better quality. It had higher mineral content in it, et cetera, et cetera. So if you nail your sleep game and optimize your hydration by adding in some Celtic sea salt in the morning and evening, that will bring you probably 40% of the way to being significantly more optimized, because it will improve mental clarity, it will improve your energy, it will improve your sleep, it will stop you waking in the middle of the night, and you'll be a much healthier, happier human being versus someone that sleeps 3 hours a night, or for instance, extreme, or when you're traveling and you know how grumpy or easy it is to be agitated. Well, it's not just a on or on off, it's in between. And I think people that are chronically dehydrated without realizing it and undersleeping have that.
So comparing your health today, I mean, this is a long journey that you've been on, but clearly one that's been incredibly educational, and now you're leading the way, with the biohacking movement in this country. How would you describe your health today compared to 10 years ago?
I'm a different human. I really am. I still have health issues, minor ones, albeit, but I was ill and I didn't even know it before I got ill. And I was 32 when I got ill. And if you see a picture of me now versus then, I'm completely different. My energy is better than I was at 32. It's changed me significantly, put it that way. Most of this stuff, if I knew the stuff now, if I knew then what I knew now, I could probably fix most of the stuff within 6 months and have saved myself, 9.5 years. But the point is 10 years ago, it wasn't readily available to get a functional medicine practitioner, or there wasn't things like Lanserhof in London at the time. There wasn't a lot of data in terms of biohacking. Even genetic testing was in its infancy, retail wise, and you couldn't look at what genetic mutations you had to optimize your supplementation and things like that. So there was a whole things that haven't happened. So time's gone along, and also it's grown so much of a movement. You only have to go on Instagram to look at functional practitioners and see how much of this stuff that they're talking about now.
Yes.
So I think while I'm very different, people nowadays can be significantly better within months. And, I can not that I work with people as a practitioner, I don't, but if a friend or colleague or whatever asks me, for advice, then I would say, this is what I would do. Fixing sleep within 3 or 4 days is very, very common practice, even when, they've been on sleeping drugs for years.
That's powerful. And with all of the different approaches to biohacking your life, are there any potential dangers involved? Are there any negative side effects or risks? What are the downsides potentially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's with everything. There's risks, and I calculate before I do anything. I think there's been some people that have gone too extreme with some things, but I think if you're putting the basics of nature in place, sunlight, getting plenty of sunlight opposed to covering yourself up from it, getting some grounding in. Obviously, there's science behind that, which we can discuss if you like in a minute. Making sure that you're hydrated properly, making sure that you're sleeping properly, making sure that you're moving every day. Having the basics, the fundamentals in place, they're safe. I mean, there's really nothing bad that can come of it versus, drugs that have serious side effects that have minimal gain compared to some of these things. But there's always a dark side to everything. And, there has been a few cases of people going a bit too extreme, I think. So, but I think if you work with, for instance, as I always say, work with a functional medicine practitioner and are guided and put the basics of nature in place that we've discussed, then I think, you can't really go wrong.
And, this is as an approach, biohacking can be taken to extremes. Are you aware of what are the most dangerous types of biohacks that are currently being tried or that are out there that, you think, oh, goodness, no, wouldn't go there? I
think that you can get used to using too many devices and reliance on devices, which I think can be dangerous. I've got a device for this, or I've got a device for that, or I'm taking 15 supplements for this or 20 supplements for that. I mean, we just don't know the knock-on effects. Psychologically speaking, having to rely on a device for a start, or having, 15, 20 supplements without necessarily having guidance. I think that's the type of approach that I avoid now. I do have device. So for instance, if I need super mental clarity, I'll use one, but I don't rely on it. I make sure that the building blocks are in place. So, and then in terms of other interventions, gene therapy, I'm not a fan of yet. We just don't know enough about it. It's in its infancy. And I think the risk is way too high and the reward is way too unknown for the moment. But there are some really good emerging things happening that I'm hearing good things from colleagues around gene therapy. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, I spoke to a very senior gastroenterologist about 8 years ago about probiotics, for instance. And he said, oh, we just don't know enough. We just don't know enough. And, they're not proven to work. Don't go near them and blah, 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 blah. I tested anyway after getting a microbiome test done and replaced the things that I needed. And it resolved my issues quite quickly. So I think that's where gene editing is at the moment in terms of its infancy. Yes. Now microbiome testing is very readily available. Probiotics are available everywhere. Everyone's drinking kombucha, which I don't necessarily agree with, like it's water. So, we'll see how that goes.
And Tim, you're the founder of the Health Optimisation Summit, and I think that's grown to really quite a big annual event. Would you like to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. I read so many books, got to know so many speakers, been to so many American events, and realized that we didn't really have anything quite like it in Europe. So I wanted a community. I wanted to bring everyone together. So I created the Health Optimisation Summit. And instead of calling it a biohacking summit or whatever, which is very niche and not accessible to, the general population. In fact, less than 0.1% when I surveyed knew what biohacking was, let alone wanted to biohack themselves. But when you talk about, health optimization, then we hit 94% of people for themselves and 5% for loved ones, and less than 1% actually were just too busy to stop and answer. So it shows that it's widely needed. Then I bring the best speakers, best authors, and the best brands, technologies or supplements or, emerging things that I have tested on myself and bring them to London. So that's 1,500 people, 40 to 50 speakers, 100 brands, 2 days, VIP speaker dinner on the Friday night, so you get to eat with the speakers, and a biodynamic organic natural wine party on the Saturday night, which is almost pretty much hangover-free wine. And then
is there such a thing, Tim?
There is. I mean, I'm happy to quickly jump on this. Actually. So biodynamic is controversial, but there's a lot of natural processes involved in it. It's natural organic wine, so it's grown on mineral-rich soil, generally with rocks underneath it. So the roots bring up lots of minerals. They're not irrigated, so it's not got tapped water on it, opposed to it's got natural waters, it's got natural minerals in it. There's no sulfites. It's low in sugar. So the sugar and alcohol balance is what causes the toxicity in the liver, which gives people the hangover and also the dehydration. Now, because it's mineral rich, it's high in natural water, and it's low in sugar, and it tastes amazing, you don't get the hangover. And in fact, I was at an event a few years ago where a private island, a CEO retreat, and we were all drinking this stuff, and not a single person had hangovers. 130 of us, and the large majority of us were drinking this.
Were you all blind drunk the night before?
Yeah, I don't do it often, but when I do it with the good stuff. So my point is, we got a party on the Saturday night with stuff from Dry Farm Wine.
That's the holy grail you've discovered there. But no, obviously that's grown. And are you able to resume this year? The summit?
We're planned 17th to 19th of September in Business Design Centre in Angel, and really looking forward to it. We had postponed it from last year just because obvious reasons, but I'm really looking forward to it. We've got an awesome lineup and some amazing brands involved, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Good, as am I, and I'm sure all our listeners would like to know more. To round off, and this has been incredibly insightful and fascinating discussion, Tim, thank you. What are the rules, if you had to sum up, what are the rules that you live by?
Be a compassionate hard ass is number one. Be direct, sincere, but gentlemanly is some things that I tried to hold myself to, because I think values drive us or guide us more than, little rules here and there. Eat organic, natural food 90% of the time. Eat only grass-fed organic meat, and try to find magic in every encounter. That's really, those are the things that really drive me. And then, optimize my health so I can spread the health to other people on a grand scale. That's really why I went to the summit.
Okay. Well, Tim, thanks again. Really enjoyed this chat, and I look forward to raising a glass of hangover-free wine with you in the very near future. And when you're back from Germany, do come and see us.
I will do, of course. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Tim. All the best.